Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
A federal union is suing the Bureau of Prisons over the recent cancellation of its collective bargaining agreement. The lawsuit comes after BOP ended its contract in September, arguing that the union had become a, quote, obstacle to progress. The American Federation of Government Employees is now alleging that the agency's decision violated the law. Here with more, Federal News Network's Drew Friedman. Drew, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Terry.
Give us a timeline. How did all of this start, and how did we wind up here with a lawsuit?
This can all really be traced back to a series of executive orders from President Trump, one in March and then a second one in August, that essentially called on a majority of federal agencies to cancel their collective bargaining agreements for what he called national security purposes. Those orders were held up due to some legal battles earlier this year, but eventually in August, an appeals court overturned an injunction in the court in August, and that allowed some agencies to move forward since then with canceling their contracts. We've seen some agencies, not all, start to take these actions, but it's clear that, of course, the Bureau of Prisons is one of the agencies that has moved forward here. On September 25th, they were one of the agencies to announce that they would no longer be recognizing the union and that they were ending collective bargaining for more than 30,000 employees at the BOP.
Did the BOP give a rationale in that September announcement for why they were ending the contract?
They did, but it wasn't what necessarily was expected or laid out in President Trump's orders. So the president did, when he signed these executive orders, point to national security concerns and talk about a pretty narrow provision of a law from the 1970s for the reason behind being able to cancel these contracts. But the BOP director, when they announced that they were going to be taking away the collective bargaining agreement, talked more about how the union had become an obstacle to progress, as you mentioned, talked about that it was ending the agreement because it believed that collective bargaining was a roadblock to moving forward with the agency's efforts to change things under the Trump administration. So there was no real, allusion to the national security concerns as President Trump laid out. That's part of the rationale for the legal action that the union is taking now as well.
So tell us more about AFGE's lawsuit. What are their complaints or allegations?
So what it really boils down to here is a violation of two different laws. The first that they say has been violated is First Amendment rights. They say that the union has protected free speech to be able to speak out, for example, against the administration's actions. But similar to a lot of other lawsuits that AFGE has filed this year, this one says that it believes the agency retaliated against the union by canceling the contract, despite the union having its First Amendment rights guaranteed. The other allegation that's being made in this lawsuit is a violation of the Administrative Procedure Act. And what that says is just at a basic level that the BOP has to follow specific protocols when moving forward with this type of action. The union says that it didn't follow the exact procedures. For example, it didn't consider alternative options to canceling the contract and didn't really provide a compelling reason for canceling the contract. So now with this new lawsuit, this comes on top of another one that AFGE already has over agencies' actions more broadly canceling collective bargaining agreements. Now this additional lawsuit on the BOP specifically has gained support from AFGE National as well, but it is a separate lawsuit from what AFGE has already been trying to do for several months now.
Sounds like a really complex situation, and perhaps BOP separating itself in its explanation from the executive order opened that window.
That's right. It is a little bit of a separate issue. And I think one other thing to mention here, too, is that BOP was not one of the agencies that was outlined in President Trump's executive orders. There was some additional OPM guidance after those orders came out to say, these are the agencies we're focusing on for terminating collective bargaining. BOP was not listed there. And that may be another reason why this part of the union has moved forward with its own lawsuit.
It seems like this might be adding insult to injury for BOP employees. What else have they been going through this year?
There have been a lot of concerns that I've spoken with union officials on a number of occasions. They've talked about, how there have been really just ongoing staffing shortages and challenges, not just this year, but for many years for a lot of federal prisons. That's led to issues with morale, issues with overtime, and just being able to schedule enough work hours for the correctional officers. But this year, there were a couple of other instances that affected BOP employees. For example, the agency removed or sometimes reduced, in some cases reduced, retention pay incentives for correctional officers, which the union says was, a move that's going to cause further staff attrition and further staffing shortages. Earlier this year, the agency also froze at least some of its hiring efforts due to what it said were budget issues. So there's a lot of just converging pieces here that are specifically, as the union has laid out concerns about multiple times, just going to lead to further staffing issues and further workforce and morale erosion for these correctional officers.
And that has a real impact on correctional officer mental health as well. We've talked about that in the past.
Absolutely. That's definitely been a concern for AFGE, for a lot of correctional officers. BOP has also consistently been ranked either at or near the bottom of the best places to work list for many years. So this is something where there have been issues this year, but it's been building for many years in a row in terms of the challenges that the agency is seeing.
Drew, what are you seeing with the union contracts at other agencies? Are there continuing litigations happening in other places?
There are. So there was that one overarching lawsuit that I mentioned from AFGE, but there are a couple of other smaller ones as well that are still pending. But as for where the collective bargaining agreements stand themselves, that just depends on the agency. We know of some others that have moved forward with terminating their collective bargaining agreements after that appeals court decision in August. So that includes the Department of Veterans Affairs, Department of Health and Human Services, EPA, FEMA, among several others. But of course, many others have not. So it's really dependent on how the agency has decided to proceed here. There's also more recently been progress with the Protect America's Workforce Act, which is legislation that's trying to reverse all of these efforts to take away collective bargaining rights. That recently in the House gained enough signatures on a discharge petition to move toward a floor vote. So I think we might see some progress, some action there as well, possibly pretty soon, depending on the House's schedule and everything.
That's Federal News Network's Drew Friedman. Drew, thanks for keeping us posted on this.
Thank you.
You can find her story at federalnewsnetwork.com.